Being your magnetic self is being your most integrated self, your pure essence.
It's not about ego or vanity. It's not boosting yourself up. It's actually integrating.
It is a state of being. It's an essence within you to continue to come back to.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacy Phillips. As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. Part of our manifestation process entails expanding past your limiting subconscious beliefs. Therefore, by tuning into this podcast with interviews from experts, thought leaders, spiritual teachers, scientists, and those with neural manifestation success stories, you're starting the process of expanding your subconscious in order to see to believe that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Expanded. I hope you are all having a wonderful week. If you are in the midst of your holiday season, I hope you're finding some time for yourself and some restorative space. I wanted to kick off today because I know during this time of year, things can feel tense and overwhelming. Maybe you're listening to this episode months after it aired, so maybe you just need a quick decompression moment. But if you could all just take a moment to take a deep breath into your body. And letting everything empty out. Whatever you're holding on to, whatever's got you stuck or thinking about, maybe if it's a really good sensation, you're holding on to it a little bit more. Whatever it is, just take that moment to let it sort itself out through your emotional landscape and your body. This practice of resetting, taking that 1 minute, 2 minute, 30 minutes for myself over this holiday season has been so imperative. As you know, we've been going through the manifestation challenge, which is still open. And if you haven't joined yet, it is absolutely not too late. Our sale for the challenge is ending tomorrow, December 31st at midnight PST. So you can join at the sale, but the challenge is going to remain open until February. So you can join at any time. And what I really love about having access to the challenge and utilizing the deep imaginings in there, especially the letting go DI, is it gives you those moments of pause to sit and reflect, to soak in what is coming through, what pings, what intuition, what do you desire. When we cloud our space with so much going on, it is hard to hear our true inner magnetic self. Which brings me to today's episode. So this is another one of our 2023 best streaming episodes of the year, a huge fan favorite. And it's a message that really helps us understand who our true magnetic, authentic self is, what it feels like somatically in our bodies. That's what we're diving into today. What are the pillars of that essence that is already within us, inside of our being, that is just asking to come out and reconnect with us? And when thinking about resolutions or New Year's or what we want for 2024, look at how your magnetic self plays a factor in those things. Can we create more space to reconnect with our magnetic self? We have a million tools in the pathway to help you reconnect with it, but you can also do that by walking in nature or just meditating in silence and stillness or listening to that ping and going for that drive solo with your favorite music on. What are those ways you can start to honor your magnetic self right now, today, in this very moment? I know you guys are going to love this episode. And before we jump in, I wanted to share a testimonial from the challenge to help expand you in your own process.
Hi, Hi, this is Allie, and so far this is the second time I've done a manifestation challenge and my first time with an accountability buddy, and it's been amazing. Having the accountability buddy has been so great in serving as a mirror for me to identify my authentic code. And already I've manifested a raise that's going to start in the next month at the point that I was hoping for. And she's starting to pass tests, and I'm watching it right in front of me. It's been amazing. I'm really looking forward for some major manifestations of that will come through this next year. But I'm so grateful for TBM and especially the Pathways community online to help me find my accountability buddy, because we're both enjoying having a buddy so much to speak the language with. And I feel like it's going to be a very long friendship that I now have with my buddy. Thank you so much.
I really love this testimonial because it is helping expand you in a lot of different ways. One, she's not even done with the challenge yet, and she's already starting to manifest, getting a raise at the exact rate that she wanted before the new year has even hit. I think that is fantastic. And that's the universe working with you, saying the more you do this work, the more you connect with your authenticity, things can already start to come through. I know for myself, I've had some major manifestations already drop in. And the other really big point is the joy that you hear in her voice from connecting with this lifelong friend and accountability buddy. I had an accountability buddy myself for my first time, a very official accountability buddy. And I can't tell you how incredible it is to just have that friend on speed dial and be like, hey, this and this happened. You know my list. Is this a test? What should I do here? I'm coming up against this block. I'm looking at it this way. Is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything in my blind spot? Or is this coming from my ego, or does my authentic self want that? Having that person to bounce off of can make this experience so much more rich and effective. So if you haven't found a buddy yet, you can invite your friend, invite them to join the pathway with the sale. Or you can find them in our community group. We also have an Instagram post where a bunch of people listed what cities they're in. They are all over the place. Step through that fear, reach out to that person that you feel called to, and start cultivating those friendships and relationships. It is so, so, so rewarding. Okay, now on to the episode.
And now a word from our partners.
Speaking of manifestations, one major manifestation that has come through for me recently is Bond Charge's infrared PEMF mat. Their PEMF mat, which stands for Pulse Electromagnetic Field, is a magnetic energy mat that sends energy waves to work with your body's natural magnetic field and improve your overall well-being. Now, I originally heard of PEMF mats back in the day. I used the first one at Lacy's Forest Retreat House, and I kind of didn't really think it was going to do anything at first. And when I laid on this mat, I'm telling you, my whole body just relaxed. My nervous system relaxed, and I fully was able to calm down. Fast forward a few years later, one of our absolute favorite companies, Bond Charge, has launched their own PEMF mat, and it is fully loaded with all the best biohacking techniques you can imagine. So not only do they have multiple frequency settings, one for delta waves to improve deep sleep, one for grounding and earthing that is in the frequency of Schumann's resonance, which is the Earth's magnetic field frequency, one for alpha waves to increase calm creativity, one for beta waves for logical thinking, conscious thought, or meditation, and one that cycles through all four to really align all different parts of your body. But that's not all. They also have red, near infrared, and far infrared light wave frequencies. You've heard me talk about this before, but red light therapy can be so impactful for muscle soreness, tension, pain in the body, detoxification, and so many more things. It is also packed with tourmaline gemstones, germanium gemstones, and amethyst crystals, which all help to balance your mood, keep you calm, activate spiritual awareness, open intuition, and attract positive ions from your body to keep you in that balanced state. Like I said, this thing is fully loaded. So once we received it, we unloaded it into our living room, and it honestly hasn't left the floor because I find myself jumping on it multiple times a day when I want to meditate before the start of my day or when I'm needing to process and do a DI. It helps to take me deeper, calm my body, calm my nervous system. It is so good for meditation practices. It just helps you go a lot deeper. And when you are needing grounding breaks throughout the day, it is fantastic. So if you're interested in trying out any of the Bond Charge incredible biohacking products, this holiday season, they're offering their massive 25% off wide sale where you can head to bondcharge.com and the 25% off code will be auto-applied to your entire order. Hurry while stock and supplies last. And on checkout, be sure to mention that you heard about it from the Expanded podcast.
All right, on to the episode.
Today we are diving into the namesake, how to be magnetic. What is magnetism? What does it mean to be magnetic? We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier this month, but we're really diving in today with Lacy and Janelle. What does this mean? How can we achieve it? Becoming magnetic and how to be magnetic is one of the most popular Google terms I looked up recently, which is so funny that people are like searching out this energy. But let's distill it down and break it down. I wanted to kick off with one quote, like I always do for this. So, manifestations show up when we're so deep in our authenticity and worth that even when things don't plan out as we hoped, we know our worth cannot be taken from us from anything external and that good things are always coming. To me, this really feels like true magnetism energy. So, Lacy, I'm going to start off with you here, but we talked a bit about it on a recent podcast episode, but really, how did you arrive at the namesake and how does to be magnetic, how do you see it? How do you define it? And then also, how does it go with manifestation work?
Well, we arrived at the namesake through Grace. It was 100% Grace. We were doing a rebrand and we were just throwing tons of names at the wall to like encompass what we do. And I mean, I think she made a list of like a gazillion and we just kept coming back to how to be magnetic. So that is 100% Grace there. And then the energetic is interesting because I would use magnetic in writing a lot, like magnetism and magnetic. And, I think we touched on this earlier this month, but I think people who aren't in TBM or in the pathway or doing this work, they have a really egoic notion of magnetism. And the thing I always think of is like that Carly Simon song, You're So Vain. It's like you walk into the room and it's like you're just trying to command all of this energy and things into your life. And here it's quite different. Being your magnetic self is being your most integrated self. So all that to be magnetic or magnetic means is the essence you were when you came onto the planet. Even, the essence you were pre-utero trauma. Let's even get that. Like that's even deeper. Your pure essence. And all the universe is trying to do is to have you peel back the layers to get back to that essence, to be your fully realized potential self and do what you're actually here to do on the planet. Because most often than not, you're partaking in, wanting, engaging in things that aren't your true magnetic, authentic self. Most often than not, what you're engaging in, wanting, receiving in your life is mostly mirrored by your trauma still. So what you learned through pain, shame, and programming that you needed to be loved or that you're worthy of. So the good things showing up in your life and the hardships that are showing up in your life are all a reflection mostly of your pain, shame, and programming. They aren't typically a reflection of your soul's essence of what it's here to do, what it's here to accomplish, why it's here, who it's here to affect. And so in this brand, often we'll talk about like your highest self, your authentic self, and you'll hear that in spirituality. All that is your magnetic self. So in fact, there's not much about being magnetic that's egoic. So what we always see as a brand are the biggest results when we have a challenge. And then people like, they go about their own way or they die off or they do the work or whatever. And so we're like, you know what? If we're going to do this, we have to address step one, which is how to be magnetic, meaning how to meet your true essence, how to get back to your true essence, how to work from your true essence. That encapsulates what magnetic means to us, but more importantly, what you're going to discover your magnetic self and meaning is. It's your true essence.
I think it was such a revelation when you were talking about like this idea that the magnetic self is within you. It's always been you. It was you since birth. It is already present. And I think so many times people put their magnetic self on a pedestal. Like you think of old school manifestation, like getting the vibration of my magnetic self, because it's something that is without me that I'm striving for, and recontextualizing it to, no, you're not striving to it or for it. You're uncovering it. You're peeling back the things that are disconnecting you from connecting with something that you already have, that is already natural within you. You just have to tap into more. It's kind of an interesting dance with manifestation where when you are in this magnetic self, and we'll go through some of the pillars that really you guys can start to paint a picture in your mind of like what that might mean for you. But when you are in that state, that is when you're in flow. That's when manifestations can come through. That's when you can see expansion in a new way and expanders will come through. That's when taking aligned action, you can step through that fear to take that action. And that's when you'll connect with your true soul's desires. And kind of getting back to your purpose thing you said, Lacy, if the goal of the universe is to get you back to your whole magnetic self and the reason you're on this planet, the easiest flow of motion from that state is when you're manifesting, and thus you can serve your life's purpose from this state. Like whatever you're on the planet to do, your gifts, your uniqueness, your capabilities, whatever, when you get into this state, that is the highest chance of you connecting with purpose on such a deeper level.
I agree. Like you said, it's all within us and inside of us. So be really okay with where you are on that journey today. It's only going to deepen and get more special. There's no quick finish line. It's like, let's do this together in community, vision holding each other. I just wanted to name that. Like, I think people can feel like, oh, I have so far to go, but it's not the case.
And each layer coming off creates such a massive transformation. Each little tiny layer that you step through has massive transformation. Janelle, one thing that you mentioned, also thinking of like the ideology of this magnetic self, how our magnetic self is like always evolving. And you can think about like your 100-year-old magnetic self is going to be even more wise and integrated and grounded and have all the things in our version now. Talk a little bit about how you see magnetic self and what that essence means to you.
Well, I love that we name that it's not about ego or it's not vanity. It's not boosting yourself up. It's actually integrating. Basically, all of this challenge and all 2D magnetic work is all about integration.
Define that for some people, because I think for new people listening, or maybe they're coming to this for the first time, like when we say integration, like what does that really mean?
Integration to me is being able to step back and really look at, like we said, like the pain, shame, and programming, actually integrate our trauma, our experiences, our programming, what's actually us, what's not us, what's our actual alignment, what's our false self, essentially. Psychology uses the term false self. And so when we really step back, it's like, oh, this is actually a false self aspect because of my pain, shame, programming, trauma. And so when we integrate that, these false self layers come off and we get to integrate into our core magnetic self.
It's like a reconnecting, it's sounding like.
Yeah, it's a reconnecting, it's an integration. It's not having to try. It's actually just sitting back and being. I think maybe there's these paradigm shifts that kind of happen where we recognize, oh, actually that was false self. And then that falls off. And then, so when I think of my highest self, I think of there's no false self. Like it's just complete essence, freedom, core self, soul, magnetism. Like if I look back to my 20-year-old version of self, I'm like, oh, there's all these different false self aspects that I wasn't aware of at the time. Yeah. And so to me, it's just like peeling back what's actually false and what's true core essence, which is going to look so different for everyone. Like that's the beauty of all these souls, you know?
Yeah. And as we were kind of going through this journey of helping all of us reconnect to our inner magnetic self, there were sort of these pillars, these main themes that kept coming up again and again that really embodied it. And it's really this grounded, high self worth, authentic, compassionate, connected, free, and open person. And we'll kind of dive in a little bit more to what those mean. But these are really starting to get you paint the picture for you of like, oh, okay, that's a magnetic self, you know, when it's not from the ego place, what's a true level of self-worth. And when we're talking about self-worth, because I think our magnetic self has high self-worth, and we've had episodes on self-worth before, but how do you really distill it down? Like, how do you make it tangible? Lacy, how do you see self-worth? Because that is so important in order for us to align with our manifestations. But what does that feeling of high self-worth look like?
So I like to think of magnetic self and self-worth going hand in hand. So magnetic self, like we've all arrived at here, is your truest essence. It lives inside of you. The work you're doing at To Be Magnetic always is peeling back layer by layer to get to that essence. And when I think of integration, for instance, from just total energetic manifestation standpoint, it means that things that we have, we're working to heal or have healed through this work, now they're just us. Like that layer has fallen off for good. Like you were saying, that false self has just fallen off. Like that's what I'm always saying from an energetic perspective when I'm saying integration. Self-worth, the energetic around that, when we're talking about that a lot, it's often around like, I won't settle for what I settled for in the past. If we really, really distill that down, that's not even ego really either. I like to think of our magnetic self, even if we're not a gentle being, like by nature, our essence isn't a gentle being. To me, energetically, it's a very gentle thing. It's ethereal. It's who we are when we leave as a soul and we come back again, or we go through things. That's our essence, right? And so when I think of something like self-worth, that gentle essence, picking up these experiences through life, through heartbreak, through abandonment, through peer pressure, through modeling we have to be this to be loved, this like soft, gentle essence starts to dim a little. And that, to me, that dimming is where we're losing our self-worth, we're losing our self-esteem, especially in ratio to those experiences that we're dimming it. And so when I'm talking about self-worth, we're doing the work, especially on a subconscious neuroplasticity level, to look at those experiences and to renegotiate the trauma and the emotion around them. So that's where, when we're addressing our self-worth, what we're doing is basically like getting in touch with that essence and feeling around at the experiences and memories that didn't feel good and they dimmed us. And we're basically turning the light back on. So to me, your magnetic self is your essence, and then your self-worth is the light around your essence. It's not dimmed. It's where you've turned it on and all of the different doors that those experiences hide behind. You've opened the door, you've shined the light on it. That's the self-worth piece. And so like the work we're doing through To Be Magnetic is basically rediscovering our inner essence and then peeling the layers, turning the lights back on wherever we experienced pain, shame, and programming in order for that light to be on. And when you are integrated and you are in your self-worth, you know that you're there in a healthy place because you're not trauma responding. You're not over reactive or over correcting. So that's just an energetic I want people to be familiar with too. When you're actually in your self-worth in ratio to something you're calling in, like your magnetic self, and we're going to get into this more about the energetics of what a magnetic self is, you're not overcorrecting. You're not like, I said no to that asshole, or whatever the thing is. That is not your self-worth. That's still a false self. That's still ego. That's still your shadow. We can unpack more, but that's what's going on with those energies.
That visual is so key. It's like the magnetic self is your inner essence, and the self-worth is pulling that flashlight, putting that lights back on, like allowing the dimming to come back up to full volume or full light spectrum, whatever that may be. And it's interesting because when I was looking in, all the definitions of self-worth out there and really distilling down and thinking about what we believe, it's really this essence that our highest self-worth believes that we're worthy of love, belonging, respect, safety, and then having our needs met and meeting our soul desires. That's the belief system of our highest self. That's the belief system of our magnetic self. We have inherent value, we're inherently worthy, and we can have our needs met and desires met. Now, that doesn't mean causing harm to anyone else at all. It would be as that's authentic to me and to my soul's needs and desires. It's just a knowing, like, of course, I will move through life in this way because I know that I have that inherent worth. Janelle, talk a little bit about what can cause us to create these false selves, these ego personas or these masks, the shadow selves. Dive into some of that pain, shame, and programming. So people are like, okay, well, why can't I remember that? Or why don't I feel like that? Because I think most people don't operate from a sense that they're worthy of all of these things.
So from our, who our primary caregivers are, that's our first chord to whether we are worthy of love and belonging, safety, and connection. So if we are not seen, or if we don't feel safe, or we are not soothed, if we don't have that secure attachment, then essentially that's where the programming, the shame, the false self start forming. In a little bit of like, I'm, been learning a little bit about IFS, but like our protector parts, so we might go through a trauma or we don't have a secure attachment. And then we have that false self, maybe like an anger part or our aggressive part, or all these different kind of parts start forming. And so it's like our shadow self, our false self starts to develop. Also, when you think of, we are wired for how to get love and approval and all of that. So especially I feel like for women, a common one is that you go into the fawning response, which is like such deep false self of, I'm just gonna, bend, morph, do whatever I can be, whoever I think that you want me to be, and I become that. And then I've been operating out of that shell for so long that I actually think that's my real self when it's actually not at all my real self. So let's say a mom projected deep girly girl onto somebody, a girl that wasn't a really girly girl. And so, but she had to be that to please her mom, but her actual self is maybe has more masculine qualities or whatever, a different version of it. And so you truly get disconnected from your core essence. It's so layered. I mean, the primary one, obviously, why inner child is so huge is that's your first secure attachment, and everything kind of stems off of it. And then obviously you add in community and society and all of that. So there are all these different layers start to come into play. And a lot of times, especially with someone that didn't have secure attachment or had a lot of trauma, they're in their 20s and they're like, I don't know who am I? They have a concept, but it's so radically so far from their actually who they really are. So that's where it takes that time to step back and go, wow, what are all these different layers? And that the healing journey begins, to start peeling back all those things to get back to the core self.
You think about children growing up.
Yeah.
And the thing that screams in my mind is like, why were we never taught this? Like, why did we not learn all of these things? Because can you imagine like a child's life? And Lacy, you're kind of experiencing this firsthand with Teddy, like developing from a young age of honoring her true magnetic self. And when we do reparenting work and shadow work, that's what we're doing. We're reparenting our inner children to have had that magnetic self cultivated from a young age, to reconnect with it, to see what its desires are, what it loves, what it's passionate about, how it likes to play, how it likes to feel grounded, tapping into all of those essences. Lacy, what are your sort of thoughts about some of these layers? And, maybe we could go in a little bit more of why we place our self-worth in these external things as well too.
I think the biggest thing of interest to me is, and it has been since I started this work, it's been reclaiming our inner child in the most sacred way. Not even the way we think our inner child needs to be to even just survive in society, but like the full bloom magic of our inner child. Because and I'll just become really spiritual here, before we take this body and we're looking at this experience, this human experience we're going to go through. And like arguably in all spiritual forms, the reason we're taking it is to consciously evolve each time we're here, right? But even the lifetimes we've had, the traumas we've gone through, how noble and pure to go, okay, yeah, I want to do this. Like put me in the game here. There's a reason. And so anyone who's sitting here listening, there is a reason why you're here. And your egoic self might be going, oh, I know there's definitely a reason. I'm leading of this, and this. Oh no, there's a reason far greater than that. There is a reason, and it's so special. So even when you're doing like any type of traditional, work in psychology, et cetera, let's just even transcend that deeper, the full bloom of our essence of who we're here to be. And like just to get someone motivated, when we are in our magnetic self, even when we're just scratching the surface and just there for seconds and just experiencing what that is and uncovering, the most powerful thing that you have when you are mostly living in your magnetic self, especially through this work, you're like the repetition and the emotional repetition, is that it's that place that we all crave. When we're in turmoil, or when we have to pass a test, or when we're having to look at that expander and go, there's a reason that expander's in my life and I am worthy of what they have. That peace, that grounding into commanding what you want into your life, that is your magnetic self. When I'm looking at this, if you didn't have most of us didn't, even if we had the best upbringing on the planet, I see this and experience it all the time, it still wasn't tailored to that full bloom of our inner child, that full essence. So that's just something I want people to feel into from this conversation. The full essence of who you are and the full bloom is so incredible. It's so special.
There's also this celebration of the parts of us and the hard things we've gone through. Because I think in order to like fully integrate with your magnetic self, like that's why we have a section in the challenge where we're looking at shadow, we're looking at the places that we externally validate, or we have these masks on. But when we can do that, and when we can really just honor, like, wow, okay, that's how I used this persona to cope. This defiant part of me was there because it, protected me from this situation, or, that stubborn part helped me here. That shy part actually helped me stay out of the line of fire from when there was chaos around me. Like, you can really start to appreciate your inner resilience, your inner strength. And it also shines the light again on hope, on a different way of operating, on a different way of showing up in the world that doesn't rely on these old coping behaviors and masks for that sense of safety and validation. Because when you have your sense of safety, validation, love, belonging reliant on everyone else to give it to you, that's when you're lost. That's when you're like, what do I do during this transition? What do I do during this, rock bottom? What do I do here? And every time we're rock bottom, it's another place where we can say, where have I outsourced my magnetic self? Where have I outsourced my self-worth? Where have I outsourced my sense of safety? Like, how do I bring it back again? And how do I start to set the boundaries around people who are not letting it be safe for me?
Yes, that is it. No longer needing to outsource or having that become less and less and less. And your magnetic self is going to be the most helpful thing and energy in any rock bottom, magic dark, or test. There is nothing that is going to be more helpful than those spaces. There's so many people out there settling for unfulfilling relationships, or people who are stuck in toxic jobs, living in places and spaces that don't inspire them, and especially people who feel like they'll never be able to afford the things and the life that they truly desire. How do I know that? Because it was me before I discovered that manifestation is actually a totally viable, scientifically proven method of creating the life you want. I'm Lacy, I'm the founder of To Be Magnetic, and if you're not familiar with us, we at TBM offer workshops that teach you how to manifest literally everything, from love to money to career to beyond. Our courses are the most effective manifestation method on the market, and that's because of a secret that I discovered years ago about manifestation, which is you do not manifest from your thoughts. You manifest from your subconscious beliefs. So after decades of client research and input from leading doctors and therapists, we designed courses that help you rewire your subconscious mind to align with what you want to manifest. And the best part of all, for any skeptic out there, our work is completely scientifically proven to work. Just ask the tens of thousands of members inside our Pathway membership, which gives you unlimited access to all of our workshops, tools, and offerings that you'll use over the course of a year.
And right now we have our big manifestation challenge going on. It is not too late to join, where you can get really intentional about what you want to call in for the new year. Find your expanders, unblock, take that aligned action, let go of any old versions of self holding you back, and really process all of the growth you've had over this year. 98.3% of our surveyed members manifested within the first 6 months after they completed the challenge. Take that in, become that statistic with us in this next year ahead. And we have our biggest sale of the year also going on that ends on December 31st at midnight PST. So be sure to join the membership where you get all access to the challenge and all of our courses for the lowest rate of the year.
Okay, now back to the episode.
Let's dive into that first pillar of grounded. Janelle, our queen of all things nervous system regulation. We've heard about nervous system regulation kind of in different podcasts and here and there, but what does that really mean? What is the nervous system doing for us? What purpose does it serve? Talk a little bit about why it's so important to get back into that state to really pull all the parts of our brain and body back online.
So, the reason why it's so important to do them at the start of the DIs is because a lot of times we're more dysregulated without even realizing it. And to really go deep and to to actually renegotiate trauma, our nervous system does need to be in a regulated space. We can't do a DI and have it be really hit that place if we're really in that fight or flight space. We're not, it's just not going to be as effective. So taking that space to ground and reorient and come down and regulate, then our brains can actually renegotiate that trauma. So that's why it's so important to do this work. Yeah. So nervous system, there we could go. There's so much to say, but
I want to almost paint a picture, what the person who's dysregulated, reactive, they're not in touch with their body, they could be disassociating. And then what does regulation actually feel like? What does your breath feel like? What is your blood pressure probably at? What are all those somatic things that are kind of going on internally that people could be like, oh, that's what it feels like when I'm grounded?
yeah, grounded to me feels like you're present. and not in a hypervigilant way, but in a really calm way where you can really hear and take in what you're thinking, what others are thinking. You're not in this dysregulated space. So our nervous system will go into kind of this like kind of these ups and downs throughout the day, and that's normal. Sometimes we have layers of trauma where we get into these fight or flight states or kind of freeze and fawn states where we get kind of almost like paralyzed, and really stuck in those spaces. And that takes, doing trauma work consistently to then go back and to get into regular zone of regulation. And there's a million tools to do it. But in a nutshell, to answer your question, yeah, it's really presence. It's a grounded presence to me is what nervous system regulation looks like.
And I even think of like in the brain too,
Yeah.
right? Like when we're in fight or flight, our prefrontal cortex, which is like our logical reasoning, the part of us that can understand how to solve the problem or to see things neutrally, is literally offline.
It's offline. Yeah. Yeah. It's offline. There's sometimes where, let's say somebody has a lot of kind of loaded trauma responses and they're in a fight or flight. Let's say 10 is fight or flight and 0 is just completely calm. Some people like live at an 8 or 7. So the smallest little things can put them where they're now in complete dysregulation. So all of the tools and resources kind of almost like help you come down to where you have more margin to work with when something does trigger you and you do need to go. There's times where it's appropriate to go into fight or flight. We need that ability to do that. But if we're like living in that space, then it can be, gosh, your adrenals, your gut, there's a million, effects on so many levels. And also the other opposite end of the spectrum, which is the freeze and fawn, living in those states can be just equally devastating. And so we need actually more activating energy to get into a zone of regulation. So either extreme can be damaging on many, many fronts.
It's so fascinating how our bodies, fight or flight's designed to help us survive. And we need, like you said, to be up and down in those states throughout the day at different times. But extremes is not helpful, especially if we are in a place that we are physically safe. But it's so funny how our brains are designed to, shut off the prefrontal cortex to focus on all the things for fight or flight. And actually, we need to get those back online in order to calm down. So it's almost like teaching us we need to calm down before we respond. We need to calm down before we logically, think of the next case, the next step in front of us.
Yeah. Ultimately, we need to connect to our core magnetic self. Like when I think of core magnetic self, it's in that zone of regulation, where we are able to access our highest self and our highest integrity and our highest consciousness out of that space. And we're not in dysregulation in these kind of false self-protective parts that we could get into.
Okay, so now this other pillar of high self-worth, we kind of touched on this one, and knowing our authenticity, our inherent value in that authenticity, having resilience to almost continue like our needs and desires are worth pursuing, that we're worthy to follow them and pursue them and go down that rabbit hole. Lacy, any other thoughts on the authentic piece of this magnetic self, our authentic desires and connection to that?
It's kind of just what I said at the top, like real takeaway from magnetic self is it's your authentic essence. It's your whole worthy authentic essence. Therefore, like I've always said from day one, especially if you're a new listener, the universe's only intention is to get you back into your whole worthy self. What that is your magnetic self. And so therefore it's going to put mirrors around you in your life and experiences to reflect back the triggers that you need to work through or the activations in order to peel these layers away to get back to yourself. Where does manifestation play a point in that? The universe knows that you're motivated by X, Y, and Z. Therefore, it's here to connect you with those things. No prob, happy to do it. But it's going to definitely take you on the journey along the way to unblock what's blocking that manifestation, expand, showing your subconscious to see, to believe what's possible and needed for that, because most likely we're not our, fully magnetic selves, or we just haven't witnessed the thing that we want in its fullest form on a subconscious level. And then here's where magnetic self really comes in. We have to take aligned action. It means we have to pass tests, we have to jump off cliffs, that kind of work that has to come from your magnetic self, from the strength of it. So that's where authenticity plays the biggest role in this. And like you learn in how to manifest, when you're calling in a manifestation, it really has to come from your magnetic self, truly your authentic self. What does your core essence really desire? Because when you're manifesting and calling in the things that are to validate you from an external source, or the life path that's not right for you because it's what you needed for your parents to love you, etc. We've had a whole episode on how some of that might come, but most likely you'll be rock bottom and redirected on your soul's path, which is so full of abundance, so full of everything you want. So yeah, that's where authenticity plays a really big role in magnetic self. Your magnetic self is your authentic self.
Okay. And then we have this pillar of compassion. Compassionate towards ourselves, towards our shadow selves, the parts of us that we reject, the parts of ourselves that we're so embarrassed by that we don't want anyone to see. We're spending so much energy hiding this that our magnetic self can't even come out and stand there because we're so busy. It's almost like when you have like a messy room. And as a kid, when my mom would tell me to clean my room, I would put everything under a blanket on my bed and be like, it's clean. And she's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, no, look, it's totally actually really clean. It's fine. That's kind of what we're doing with our shadow. We're like, no, don't look over here. It's good. But in spending so much energy trying to hide it, we're missing our authenticness. We're missing the present moment. We're missing being grounded. We're missing the blessings in front of us. How do you guys see that?
Well, I have to say, especially when like doing this work for how many years now, anytime that I would hit a wall and nothing was happening, I would just be like, oh, I knew my personal pattern was every time I did the shadow workshop, literally without fail, every single time the floodgates would open. Every single time I had so much resistance around it. And then it became, after I just kind of got motivated, I was like, now it became like the most rewarding work. It is the most rewarding work ever.
And when you say the floodgates would open, what would happen, Janelle?
I would have manifestation come through like that every single time. So yeah, it's really, really hard. It's so hard. And it is such a deeply necessary piece to get to your magnetism. That's the delayering of the false self, is the shadow piece. And being able to navigate shadow well requires a lot of curiosity and a lot of compassion, so you're not wrecked by it and you can actually integrate it. Because I don't think you can integrate shadow without having the compassion. It's just not possible.
Well, and then it's like you can start to have compassion for when you have tests and triggers come up in your real life and someone does something that irritates you or pushes your threshold over or it touches on a pain point. You're like, oh, they're operating from this state of mind just like I am, and they're trying the best they can. You don't take it personally as much anymore. And that's when you start to like disconnect. And, there's so many layers of it, but that's when we say like if a test or trigger isn't as activating, like it hits you again, you're like, oh, okay, whatever. That's when you've tapped into that compassionate part because you're not needing that very specific outcome from this other person. You can see their humanness.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this other pillar of connected. This one, Lacy, you called this right from the beginning to put in this pings intuition piece in there because it is so important. When we think about our magnetic self and connection, it's really connection, mind, body, soul, connection to others, connection to the universe that allows us to trust our timing, our gifts, our, everything that's happening in this world. If we feel like we are connected to something that's beyond this really small moment in front of us that is bothering us and say like, wait, I have almost like an energetic support system behind me at all times within me, you can move through life with more trust and surrender. How do you guys navigate connection?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it all comes down to just really working with intuition and working with the universe. And really, intuition is just the universe working through us. So I think it's just such a vital part of manifestation, that pings piece, that connected piece, the intuition piece, because the universe is communicating to us at all times through us and around us, and it's like if we can just become in, your terms, Janelle, in a grounded enough, a regulated enough space to receive that information, to not be reactive to the situation in front of us and really, really see it for what it's doing for us, then we start to witness the clear communication and flow of the universe. So I think it's so big, it's so important.
And then we have free. So free is really the detached part of our magnetic self. It's the part that when the things fall off and crumble around us, our sense of self-worth doesn't go with it. It can say, wow, this is painful and this hurts. And I'm going to have to sit with this discomfort and move through those feelings. Don't bypass the feelings, but I will be okay. How do you guys work with that essence, that sort of freedom, detachment of outcome and expectation?
Well, I see like the more that we work with our subconscious, creating stronger and stronger neuroplasticity around the magnetic self, which we can also call the trust muscle, knowing that we are totally fully supported and taken care of. I'm also going to call this the integrated self. If everybody takes a moment to think of their ultimate Achilles heel, mine forever was money, because the rug was always pulled out from under us. We didn't have enough. My mom writing a hot check, etc. Those don't ever affect me anymore. They just do not, because I've done so much work around this and integrating, like we've been talking about, those triggers and those experiences, those pain points. That's what free really represents in this pillar. The more that we strengthen our trust muscle through our magnetic self, the freer we become. So that means that, when you're going through an eclipse season or a big transition or jumping off the cliff, you're able to stay regulated and grounded. Your feelings are going to come up and you're going to, ride those waves, but you're able to not go into that place of holy shit, everything's going to fall apart or really bad stuff's going to happen to me. Those narratives start to quiet and quiet and quiet and quiet until they diminish, really. So that's what free represents to me. What about you, Janelle?
Oh, I thought that was so beautifully said. That's exactly what I was thinking too, of the trusty eye and the trust muscle and all of that. I also feel like there's some component of being able to let go. We want to grip what we think is best, and we can hold on to it for dear life. And that's actually what causes the pain and suffering versus when we're really in a deep aligned trust, even though we're like, but it's perfect, universe. Can't you see that this is the thing I was supposed to? You got it wrong, and we can go, okay, no, the universe's way is going to be better and has my very highest interest in line. And I deeply know that, which is a process to get there, to develop that trust muscle where you can let go and surrender. You won't get so bruised by life. I think when we're really gripping things, we can get really beat up versus when we surrender, it's like there's just more ease with what comes through and doesn't.
Lacy, one thing I want to pull out from your story too, I could see people listening being like, oh, okay, she feels like that because she's financially stable. But actually, if that were the case, that would be the self worth, putting your self worth in outside things. But what you're saying is, regardless of what monetary value you're at, when you are tested with those things, you're like, okay, I have a deep belief that I will be okay and that I'll figure it out in order to get my needs met because I know I'm worth it.
Yeah, and just for another person listening too, because the universe is so spectacular at trying to get one into their whole worthy, authentic self. If that was an Achilles heel and you're so close to a manifestation and your last magic dark tests are coming in, it's not going to hit you with chill shit wherever you are because it's just there's no time and space, right? Wherever you are financially, it's going to hit you with the exact experience that's going to trigger or re-trigger that old feeling in you that you're going to start shaking and you're going to start freaking out. It's going to give you that experience to go, are you sure? Are you sure you've outgrown this? Because I just really want to make sure that you are fully aligned with the self-worth of this thing coming through. So I just really want to make that clear that as we continue to integrate and up level, the universe too is going to continue to integrate and up level the test it sends you. And it will never send you something you can't handle because the universe is never trying to punish you. And in fact, it's never trying to beat you down or any of those things. It's trying to get you to integrate this experience and get into your magnetic self so that you are completely in vibration, which means self-worth of the thing you're calling in. So I just want that to resonate with everybody too. That big magic dark test or that big rock bottom's not going to be some chill shit. It's going to be right wherever you're at. And there, there you are. So just so we all know.
And that kind of also brings up another point that I think is worth noting at this stage of the convo too, that your magnetic self, like I said in the beginning, is not a pillar to land on and then you're there permanently. It is a state of being. It's an essence within you to continue to come back to. What we're trying to work on in this challenge is developing the neural pathway of connection to your magnetic self. Somatically, what does it feel like? What does it feel like when you're operating there, when you're standing from that place, when you're interacting with the world from that place? And then, like the natural ebbs and flows, you'll be knocked out of it and things will come up. And that's normal. That's life. Majority of the time, I'm probably not in my magnetic self. I'm operating on ups and downs. But the goal is to just get closer to it, to understand what it feels like to be there, to know it's a tool in your disposal to lean on when times get tough.
Yeah, and it's not even like all of that energetically. More so, it's the tool that's always sitting there waiting for you to ground into when shit hits the fan, when you have to pass a test, when you don't feel worthy enough of the expander you're looking at. And in fact, envy is coming out. And you're like, wait, what? That's what it is. So the beautiful thing about 2B magnetic work that's so different than old spiritual bypass manifestation is your magnetic self, like Jessica's saying, isn't something to try to be in all the time. It's not a vortex. It's not a frequency. It's inside of you, and it's going to be a tool that you can ground into when needed. And the even bigger beauty of doing 2B magnetic work that is scientifically backed, every single deep imagining DI you do, every single test you pass, that has that emotional stimulation around it, you are furthering the neural pathways to connect, fire, and wire that you are becoming your magnetic self. So this isn't something you have to worry about, like, I've got to be in this thing, I've got to stay in this thing to manifest. No, through every single piece of work you do in the pathway in 2B magnetic, you are on a neuroplasticity level, anchoring deeper, deeper, deeper into that magnetic self. It's so recognizable. The feeling, the actions from this place, the responses from this place, the emotions from this place, what it feels, it's going to be so recognizable that anytime you need this tool to ground into for a magic dark, for a test, for a rock bottom, for an expander, for an unblocking, it is there for you. And all of the repetition you're doing in anything, whether it's in the money workshop, whatever you are doing that's a deep imagining, is furthering you into that place, gently pushing you to become more and more of that every day, all day.
It was so funny. I was listening to the new Magnetic Self DI when I was driving up to Topanga to do the shoot for the challenge. And on the way there, I felt so grounded and present. And usually when I drive in the car, I have to I want to party my back some way, shape, or form because I'm just tensed at the wheel or the way the chair is. I'm not sure what it is. But for some reason, by the time I was done with the drive, it felt like a breeze. There wasn't any like crazy cars that were doing all the stuff they do in LA. It was just like such a peaceful, wonderful drive. My back didn't hurt. And I was like, what is it? And I was like, oh, I was grounded. I was present. I wasn't in a hurry. I wasn't trying to rush. I wasn't trying to control the situation of the drive. I was just like, okay, that car's doing that. I'll go over here. You know, it was just this ease. And then it was so funny on the way home, I wanted to get back by a certain time. And so the presence and the magnetism kind of left, and the we need to get home came on board and took the driver's seat. And my back hurt after the drive. I was tense. The craziest cars were in front of me. And I was like, oh my gosh, the world really does shift when you can view it from that state versus when you're trying to control or have expectations, or when you're letting other parts of you take over. The last little pillar I want to touch on before we end here is open. So this is the part of our magnetic self that is open to new possibilities, that sees wonder, that doesn't have judgment. They're not suppressing their uncomfortable feelings. They're willing to go forward through them, but they know that they're not going to get swallowed by them. The openness leads us to find our expansion, to see the world as our expansion at all times. Actually, Monica Parker, who was a guest that we had on earlier this year, she said, wonder straddles the gateway between our normal waking consciousness and the realm beyond. There is this magic, a crackle, a sacred thrum from at the threshold between these two states. This illusionary world shrinks in relation to the wonder that we find on the other side. How do you guys see this energy of openness?
I'll let you take it, Janelle, from a therapeutic lens.
My first thought when you were reading that was just someone has to be regulated in order to be open. Like that was my just immediate thought. Openness is almost like the accumulation of all of these layers coming off and releasing and trust muscle and all. It's almost like the final outcome, if you will, after you've done all these layers is your nervous system is regulated. You can be open. You're in a place of surrender. You're not gripping. You're not in fear. You're not in fight or flight. You're not in ego. It feels like a surrendered, really magnetic essence.
I love that, because so much in manifestation, you always hear like, let it go. What they're actually talking about is what you're saying. And it's not something you can fake or pretend. It's something you arrive at through peeling away. So it's just something for people to know that the coolest thing is you are doing so many things at once that are just crazy manifestation power stuff, you know? So yeah, that's the thought I have with that. That's what the energetic of really surrender means in manifestation. It's not something you fake, you arrive at it.
I'm so excited. Thank you both. Janelle, thank you so much for really helping spearhead what's going on in these deep imaginings, the psychology behind so many elements of it. Lacy, thank you for your energetics, your teaching, for understanding the universe at a level that we are trying to distill back down to earth in such a beautiful way.
Thank you. And always, Jessica, for being the light in the crowd that keeps us on point and going everywhere we need to go.
So true.
Well, we're so excited to connect with you guys and really think about what would it feel like if you could be connected deeper with your magnetic self. Start the journey now. Begin now. Step 1 to reconnecting with who you are magnetically in this moment. It's going to be a good one. I hope you all enjoyed that episode as much as we did. And if you're starting to get a feel for this to be magnetic manifestation process, but aren't completely sold yet, let me point you to some of our free offerings. You can check out the expanded podcast episode called How to Manifest Anything You Desire, where Lacy, the founder, and I break down exactly what this process is all about. You can check out the Motivation, which is our testimonial library with thousands of testimonials of people who have manifested wild things using this process. Or you could check out our free quiz to find out what manifestation phase you were in, the rut, the rock bottom, the next level, or the magic dark, and how you can navigate. Enjoy! We'll see you next week.